There are some things I'll take a chance on, but life is already enough of a gamble for me to put my whole nest egg in the share market. So I take a calmer path. By investing in private credit, I know my money could be growing, not yo-yoing.
From Barangaroo Studios, the AusBiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
G'day and welcome to the COB on this Tuesday. I'm Andrew Gagan. Thanks for joining us here at AusBiz as we wrap up the day with the COB. It's been a fascinating day on markets given we've taken out another record high on the ASX 200. We can see the moves on the COB 200. Looks as though we're going to finish up 0.7%. Similar moves we have seen on the ASX 200. It did hit an intraday record of 9,115 points, just tipped back below 9,100 at the end of trade. Most sectors in the green. I'll get to that in just a moment. Let's catch up with the themes of the day though. Rare earth, rapprochement. That's certainly the case where we saw that meeting in the White House between Anthony Albanese and Donald Trump that led to the signing of an agreement between the two countries, essentially to take on China and its dominance of the rare earth space. So we'll see investment from Australia and in the US into companies on both sides of the Pacific into rare earth and critical minerals. Record reset, I've just mentioned where we finished on the market, close to that record that was taken out again earlier today. And well, more broadly, I guess, what we've seen in the resources sector, very positive day, driven in part by moves from the likes of BHP and South32 with their quarterly updates. Let's get into the sectors today. Well, why don't we start on the rare earths, given that has been the top news. And interestingly, Linus has come off quite substantially. It wasn't mentioned as part of those companies likely to benefit from the funding. Whereas, well, that seems a bit odd actually, because last time I looked, Arafura was definitely up, but Australian Strategic Materials certainly up there more than 10%, despite the fact it was not mentioned. BHP, as I've pointed out there, one of the better performers, up more than 2.5%, taking the other large miners with it. South32 also updating the market, a strong mover there, up almost 5%. And in fact, one sector that finished in the red was the consumer staples sector, with some minor moves there from Coles and Woolies down marginally, but Metcash was down more than 1% along with Endeavour Group. Let's catch up with the top stories then. The US Export-Import Bank has sent letters of intent for financing to a number of firms. They include Arafura Rare Earths, Northern Minerals, Latrobe Magnesium, Sunrise Energy Metals, among them. Elsewhere, BHP did see production dip at its iron ore mines in WA over the first quarter of the financial year, but overall, another strong quarter for production for BHP. South32 reaffirming its FY26 guidance, and Hub24 reporting a 28% increase in net inflows over the first quarter. Elsewhere in the C-suite, NAB has promoted Shane Conway to Group Executive for Transformation. QBE appointing Chris Killoury as Chief Financial Officer. Let's now catch up with what we've seen today. We welcome Mathan Somasundaram from Deep Data Analytics. Mathan, welcome back. Good to see you. All right, let's start with that news that began the day. Donald Trump, Anthony Albanese getting their heads together in the White House. Smiles all round, and certainly smiles among those rare earth miners.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the most obvious thing that everyone knew about. I mean, was there anyone that didn't know that America needs rare earth and Australia has it? and there was always going to be a deal. I mean, Mr. Trump is known for the taco deals, start with a threat and they end up doing a deal. And the deals are usually kind of a weird ones because you kind of know that was always going to happen anyway. Rare earth is not really rare, it's everywhere. Uh, that's the irony of it. But the question always been is the processing of it. And China owns, 70 to 80, 90% in some cases. And that's where they have competitive advantage. Just there is no alternative. We can all talk about all the options, but as far as rare earth is concerned, you still have to send it to China to process. The only unique offering is Linus. And Linus has already had a huge one. I mean, we were in a 6-7, it's now nearly tripled. And I wasn't surprised that some of the, I guess, the well-known ones that have done well has seen profit taking. They were actually up on the morning and then they've come down.
Well, in fact, I was just going to ask you about that because particularly Arafura obviously was one of the headlines there, and it's actually ended in the red.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. It's basically buy the rumor, sell the fact. We kind of knew all of these things were obvious. I mean, if you look back at what happened with, I mean, Linus is the biggest player, right? And Linus, when they got into issues with regulatory concerns in Malaysia, they were trying to get a 3-month extension. The US government and the Australian government got involved and they got a 3-year extension. So that told us years ago that this is a critical mineral play and Linus was going to get government support. And I don't think that changes. The reason why we're seeing the selling is obviously major funds who are in it, they need to sell in liquidity event, and this is one of the good liquidity events. And they've tripled their money. It makes sense for them to reduce. And I think they were selling into the optimism. And that's fine. I don't think that's going to go away. Now you look back at what is it playing for? You're playing the Chinese-US trade war. I don't think that's getting resolved anytime soon. And so rare earth will remain a key critical element. Processing is still dominated by China. Linus is the only real player outside China. And so irrespective of how much money you put in, for a number of years, China will dominate that market. Linus is going to be one of the few players outside. So I think that benefits them and it becomes a critical asset. So I'm not surprised by the pullback. It's a bit like gold. Everyone hammered it yesterday and everyone's buying it back today. So
yes, I was going to ask you about that.
It's a wonky market.
Well, I mean, all the action is in the resources sector at the moment, isn't it? I'll get to gold in a moment, but BHP off the back of its quarterly today, what did you make of that?
Look, I don't think it was anything special. I think it's just that market is happy that it didn't do anything stupid. I think the miners are relatively okay because the commodity prices have remained relatively okay. They're not shooting the lights out, but they're not blowing up. Chinese data yesterday was pretty solid. There's no real need for, I suppose, stimulus in China, but there's no real blow-up worry as well. I mean, people tell you China's going broke. I mean, that's been happening since I started the industry. That's 30 years ago. And that still goes on. So I'm not worried about China blowing up tomorrow if that's the concern. So the numbers are pretty stable and that still holds up. They're slowing down, yes, because they're getting bigger and bigger. As they get bigger, it's natural for growth to slow down. So that's playing out. The trade war is, hurting everyone. And US, again, threatened, I think today they threatened 155% tariff on China. I mean, it's ludicrous. That's just not going to hold, right? We know that. It just cannot be done. And the market is now almost ignoring these things. So in that context, I think the commodity prices are holding up. Now, it is a worry because one of them is wrong. Either economic growth is going to recover or demand for a lot of these things will fade. So that's where, it's a bit tricky. I think you're looking at economic growth at least gradually fading. Everyone's pricing in a fair amount of rate cuts. If commodity prices are high, inflation is going to be high, rate cuts don't happen. So there's this balancing effect that has to play out. So I think it's got to be careful here. I'm not buying into the big miners. We're specific commodity based. We like gold. We've been in gold for a long time. We like rare earth. We like uranium. We like thermal coal. We're very specific about commodities. And we think that the growth play in those will continue. But, overall resource sector, I think the big miners, it's going to be tough to keep up in this uncertain macro environment over the next 6 to 12 months.
All right. Look, we won't dwell on gold. We've been there. So much commentary. I mean, do you feel as though it's just going to continue to run? That yesterday we had a bit of a pullback. That was the opportunity that people saw.
That's actually quite crazy, isn't it? I mean, I know a couple of years ago we were happy with 2000. Now we're talking about, mid 4,000, and people were scared by $100 drop at mid 4,000. I mean, that's not even a rounding error. It's a irrelevant number. I think the whole play for gold has been, we're just betting on policy mistakes, and we're just seeing that everywhere. I don't think there is any easy answer. Nobody wants to do the hard work, which means we're going to have policy mistakes. So I'm long gold, and I am not even thinking about taking profit.
Well, I would be surprised if you weren't. Mathan, given how long you've been saying that for. Look, finally to the market itself, of course, hitting a new intraday record. What did you make of that? Are you remaining bullish overall?
Look, I think overall, I'm actually really worried because, I mean, we've been bearish on the overall market. And if you look back what's happened in the last, couple of weeks where the market has a bit of a bounce back, you look at CommBank. Most of the banks have struggled. CommBank is bounced about 5-6%. And its, multiple is, pricing like it's WiseTech. And it has no growth. And, you looked at the zip numbers, you're starting to see bad debts becoming a problem. And that's kind of like the canary in the coal mine. So in that context, banks are going to struggle. Growth rates are going to get weaker, and people are paying historical high multiples. So it just doesn't add up. So I know the flow of funds is pushing that, and that's fine. I'm very bullish on specific parts of the market, but I'm not even remotely bullish on the overall market because the big caps don't really offer me a lot of growth. So you really have to be very selective at this point on the cycle.
Mathan, enjoy your evening. Thanks for joining us in Deep Data Analytics.
Not a problem. Thank you.
All right, let's now get to our stock of the day. No surprise, was a rare earth miner in Arafura, and our experts, Philip Pepe from Shore & Partners and Philip Van Dyke from FN Arena, took a look at it.
Understand that we need a solution away from China, and there'll be money thrown at possible solution providers, and Arafura is one of those. And we saw the bump today, as this sector gets more and more eyeballs on it, and the last few months have actually been quite positive for it. I think it's onwards and upwards. It doesn't look cheap again. It doesn't look cheap, but this has just happened. So analysts need time to update their numbers and update their view. I'd expect upgrades across the sector, throughout the course of the week as people digest last night's news.
So you're basically buying enthusiasm, yeah? And enthusiasm can disappear as quickly as it can rise again. So I wouldn't.
A bit like that chart.
Yeah, well, there you go. See, that's my point. So I wouldn't join the enthusiasm at all. And if I would go into enthusiasm, I would go for a producer like Linus, which apparently is also about to enter the ASX 50.
So let's sum up the winners and losers in today's trade, beginning with those in the green. Hub24, after its update, up more than 10%. Mesoblast doing very well today, up more than 9%, along with Drone Shield. Alcoa, one of those companies mentioned at the White House in terms of funding for critical minerals. And negatively, we saw Linus actually move in the opposite direction to its cousins in the rare earth space. Zip coming off, along with Perpetual Yancoal and Bapcor. Elsewhere, in the small caps, Anteris Technologies up 21% today, and also Australian Vanadium on that list as well, whereas Resolution Minerals tumbled. Findi also with an update, it came off 12%, Trig Minerals, Hastings and Core. Lithium also taking a tumble. So overnight, we're expecting some commentary from ECB President Christine Lagarde. We also get an inflation read out of Canada. Tomorrow, trade balance from Japan, and among the AGMs, locally, APA Group, Fletcher Building and Codan, and also an investor briefing from Drone Shield. So let's recap the market then, finishing up 0.7%. We did take out an intraday record high on the ASX 200. It has come off just a little, but sitting currently just below 9,100. That's the state of play on this Tuesday. Thanks for watching and listening.
The COB is brought to you by Montgomery Investment Management. The world is volatile. Your financial future doesn't have to be. Find out more at montinvest.com.